Welcome, everybody. I have with me a guest. Mick Hesse is with us, and Mick is joining us from Farmington, New Mexico. Welcome, Mick. Thank you very much for joining us. You're from Western New York originally. Where in New York are you originally from?
It's a small rural town south of Buffalo called Springville.
Okay.
And as I say, it's a rural community, a very small population. When I was growing up, 3,000 people or something like that.
You attended Eastman School of Music in Rochester, and then from there you joined the West Point Band. That was in what, the late 60s? Did I get that right?
Yeah, it was the late 60s. There was a little story to tell. My teacher at Eastman was Sid Meir. And I remember, Vietnam was raging at the time. And those of us who were in college, we didn't pay too much attention to it. It was just a fact of life. But as we got toward graduating, then things were going to change. And I remember him saying at one of my lessons, probably in the spring of my senior year, he said, "So Mick, what are you doing next year?" And I had no idea. And he said, "Well, would you want to go to the West Point Band?" And I said, "Well, my dad always wanted me to go to West Point." He was an old World War II vet, so he thought it'd be cool if his son went to West Point, but not as a bandsman.
Right.
So I said, yeah. So he called up, the guy's name was Colonel Schempf. He was the head honcho at West Point at that time, happened to also be an Eastman alum. I forget his real background, but he had connections with Eastman. And I remember in the phone conversation, Mr. Meir saying to Colonel Schempf, he said, "Well, I've got a live one here. Could you use another trumpet?" And he apparently, I didn't hear his end of the conversation, but apparently he said yes. Then I had to go and take the audition. They still required the audition, but it was good to know that there was somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody,
And you spent how many years at the West Point with the West Point Band? 3 years?
It's a 3-year commitment back then. If you signed up, it was a 3-year gig. And however, Nixon was president then and was trying to wind down the war.
Mm-hmm.
And a rule came down that if you could get a full-time job, you could get out 6 months early. So that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
I got a teaching job just right near West Point. That was perfect way to get out of the army.
So from there, you moved to Norway.
Yeah.
What brought that on? Why Norway? I love Norway. I've been there, but why Norway?
That was we knew nothing about Norway. As luck, there's so many things that happen in life. You're just in the right place at the right time. And one of my wife's friends' father was a professor at a college in Geneseo, New York. And his specialty was comparative education, and it happened to be Scandinavia.
Okay.
And so one day we were home, just at my wife's home, and we met this man, and he said, "Well, would you like to go to Norway?" Well, yes.
Yeah.
We were happy to get out of the United States any way possible, to be honest with you. It was
very turbulent time.
It was a terrible time in the country's history. And so he happened to know some people in Norway who needed music teachers. And at that time, Norway was just coming out. They had just sort of discovered oil in the North Sea. And they were pumping money into education and the arts like no tomorrow. It was a fantastic time in Norway. And so we got a job just outside of Oslo teaching in a middle school, junior high.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I happened to meet Harry Kvebek, who was principal trumpet with the Oslo Philharmonic at that time. And that's what all these things, they just, the right time and all that. It's a phenomenal thing, at least looking back at my life, as far as
Well, it's
trumpet
true.
goes.
Being in the right place at the right time
Yeah.
is always, a lot of times things happen for a reason, whether you call it fate, whether you call it luck. And in this case, Harry ended up helping you pursue a career in trumpet. Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah.
He was the influence, and because of his teachings, he helped you win the audition, and make sure I get this correctly, for the Norwegian Opera and Ballet Orchestra. Is that correct? When was this?
That's correct. Well, we moved there in 71. So yeah, right around 71. And started teaching, and Harry lived in a smaller town than we lived at that time. He was really out in the country. And I had more or less given up playing trumpet. I was so disgusted with what had gone on at West Point and my experiences in the military. And however, he was conducting a community orchestra, which was meeting in the little town that we lived in outside of Oslo. And I found out that he was the principal trumpet player in the Philharmonic. So I went to a few to some of those rehearsals, and then I went to hear him play. I heard that the orchestra was doing Mahler's Third Symphony.
Oh,
And I had to go hear it, obviously.
yeah.
He was playing first trumpet in the orchestra and the offstage thing. And I was just, there was a transformative thing in my life to hear that piece played by him. It was the most beautiful recording. That's not recorded. It was the most beautiful playing I ever heard, and even to this date. I mean, there are some beautiful performances. John Weir with New York Phil is one of the most incredible recordings I've heard of. But Harry was beyond that. And I was so taken by it that I asked him if we could meet and have coffee one day. And I said to him, Harry, I'm yours. I'm at a point in my trumpet life where I don't know what's going on. And I remember literally saying, I'm giving you my I was 100% in, just
Right.
100%. And he took me on, and things just an unbelievable trumpet player. Most people don't know him or of him, but it's a style of playing that is just phenomenal. His technique was beyond reproach. His sound and tone were just the thing that and interestingly, there are people who know both of us. Poor Harry has passed on, but who say they hear me or they hear him in my playing, which is,
Talk about a compliment.
I couldn't, in my mind, I couldn't have a higher compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long? So how long from the time that when you got there, and you said that was the early 70s, you worked with him how long before you were able to audition for and get the job with the Oslo Opera and Ballet Orchestra? How long did you work with him?
I'm going to guess a year and a half, maybe a little less. An opening came up in the opera, and that's I took the audition as a result of having taken lessons with him, and got the job.
Very nice.
We were actually thinking about coming back to the States at that time, but until I got that job, and I'm so glad. I mean, that changed everything. Just another one of those little things,
Yeah, fate's a wonderful thing. So what other influential trumpet players or trumpet teachers did you have besides Harry? I know there's a couple of other ones, and one of them, Lars, but I don't know how to say the last name.
Ness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Lars was a colleague with me in the opera, and I mentioned him in my book as one of the influences who taught him, because I sat next to him every day, for 10 years or something. And he taught me, I say, to be a professional, which you know, you can go to school, you can, you know, but until you're sitting there, you don't know what day in and day out. You know, I'm not talking like a pickup orchestra or a community orchestra or something like that, but where you're living and breathing trumpet with somebody else for an extended time. So Lars was very, very influential in my approach to playing in an orchestra.
Okay.
But at one point, there was this, I took a sabbatical. I had a whole year sabbatical, actually. Norway, as I mentioned earlier, was throwing money out the door to the arts people, and you could take a year off, and a paid year off to study. So I did that, and just traveled around Europe for that year then. I didn't set up any lessons. I had a couple of lessons set up, but typically what we would do would be to drive into a city. We had a camping kind of vehicle at that time. Go to a concert. If I liked what I heard, I'd get in touch with the trumpet player that I heard, and we'd hang around for a while and get some more lessons. But then you ask influential people, and I've kind of divided my before and after trumpet life. Harry was one, but also Jimmy Stamp out in LA, who I'd heard about while I was working in Norway.
Okay. And what, so you tell me about your work with Jimmy Stamp, because if some people don't know about you, I actually know quite a bit about Jimmy Stamp, and I'm familiar with a lot of his exercises and ideas. So did you travel back to the States to
Yes.
work with him?
Yeah, I took a 3-week leave from Norway and lived right next to him in LA. And I sort of followed him around like a little puppy dog. He was teaching that at that time at UCLA, I think it was UCLA, privately, but he also had a studio somewhere in LA. I don't remember the details right now. I do remember one time. So I would sit and watch him teach and listen to him teach. When there was a break, I got a lesson. And so this went on for that 3-week period. And I remember there were a couple of times he said, "Hey, Mick, you're going to have to leave now because this guy doesn't want anybody to know that he's taking lessons." So I'm guessing it was some pro guy in LA, some studio guy maybe, you know, who didn't want people to know that he was taking lessons. But Jimmy, he was just a marvel. The method just really worked for me. It really did. I hear lots and lots of people play. When I go to some rehearsals, sometimes I'll hear the trumpet player doing them all wrong, but doing them because they heard that Jimmy Stamp makes good lessons, you know. But so I've kind of divided my trumpet playing life before and after Jimmy Stamp.
Okay.
And Harry.
Okay. And that makes sense. So you worked with the ballet and the opera orchestra for quite a while. How long did you work with them before you moved on? Because I want to talk about your time with the Oslo Philharmonic.
Well, the Oslo Philharmonic, you know, again, back to this idea of the money that was available in Norway at that time. There are 3 full-time, full-scale orchestras in Oslo. There's the Philharmonic, there's the radio orchestra, which many, many European cities have. They have, you know, their own resident orchestra, really great orchestras. And in Oslo's case, the opera and ballet orchestra. So, plus there's some military positions in Oslo as well. Full-time paid gigs, kind of like the Marine Band or the West Point Band, something like that. You know? So there's a lot of employed trumpet players in a relatively small place, you know. So everybody, of course, everybody knew everybody, and you moved around. I was a sub in the Philharmonic. I was not a regular there.
Oh, okay.
And I remember my very first professional gig was Mahler's Symphony No. 2, that has these offstage trumpet parts, you know. And I got that because Harry was, he got the offstage guys from his studio.
Okay.
So that's how I got that gig. I remember showing up for whatever reason. My first valve slide didn't make it to rehearsal.
Oh no.
I left at home, the one that,
Yeah, the thumb.
yeah, the thumb. I'd never ever lost one of those, and for some reason the day I showed up, so Harry gave me his trumpet to play. It's one of those weird things.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. So how long were you in Norway before you moved back to the States?
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
And then when you moved back to the States, so we're talking late 80s, you moved back to the States?
That's right.
And you moved back to New York, you moved back to the Buffalo area.
Yeah, this is a real sidestep here, but I've always been interested in flying. When I was at Eastman, I took some flying lessons in an airplane, a little Cub airplane. And I discovered hot air balloons while I was in Norway.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, man, I would love to fly hot air balloons. So we came back to the States about that time that you mentioned. And again, as luck would have it, one of my wife's next door neighbors, practically, this is out in her father was a dairy farmer out in the rural Western New York, more rural than Springville, where I grew up. But maybe the country's most well-known and experienced balloonist lived 5 miles away.
Really?
And so while I was sending out resumes and stuff, I was trying to get a job, a teaching job at a college or university or something. Nobody was biting. Nobody was interested. They'd never heard of me. They didn't know where Norway was. They didn't, so none of those things that I thought were sort of good milestones in my life meant nothing to anybody else. I didn't even get invited to come and audition anywhere. So I started taking hot air balloon lessons and decided I really like this. So I became a professional hot air balloon pilot over a particular park in Western New York called Letchworth State Park.
Okay.
Which is an absolutely beautiful place. And so I flew hot air and passengers for 8 or 9 years. And that's when I got involved with the Buffalo Philharmonic, which it was kind of a long drive. It was an hour and a half or 2 hours or something to get to Buffalo from there. But I still had a yearning to play trumpet, even though I was flying hot air balloons.
Okay, well, we'll get back to the hot air balloon part
Okay.
here in a second. So with Buffalo, when you played in the Buffalo Philharmonic, were you like subbing? Were you part of? So you were subbing for the Buffalo Philharmonic. Right. That must have been fun.
Michael Tilson Thomas was the head guy there at that time.
Really?
And that was a treat to play under. And Kent Nagano, I remember him as well. But I didn't live I didn't live near enough to Buffalo to really have any friends or anything like that. It was just a gig.
Right. But you still got to do it, which is more than, I would say, 90% of us trumpet players around the world get even a chance to do.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, that's the thing is most of us don't have that opportunity. And the fact that you had the opportunity to do that is wonderful. So from Buffalo and from where you lived outside of Buffalo and as a hot air balloon pilot, you then came to New Mexico and you moved to Farmington.
First we lived in Shiprock.
Oh, okay. Which is, if people don't realize that, Shiprock is due west of Farmington by about 30 minutes. Yeah. So why did you come here? Besides, we are the capital, the hot air balloon capital of the world. Is that why you came here?
Well, that was one of the reasons. My wife had gone back to school and gotten a degree she was also at Eastman early on, and she got another degree in comparative education at the college in Geneseo. And got a job in Shiprock.
Oh, okay.
So we thought, well, okay, we've never been, I knew nothing about New Mexico, nothing. And so we came out. She got the job over the phone as a special ed teacher in Shiprock.
Okay.
And I still had this balloon business going. And I knew that, as you said, that New Mexico is sort of the balloon capital of the world. And I thought, well, maybe there's a chance to make some money in ballooning out here. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. There is no chance of making a living, even in Albuquerque, where everything sort of happens. You know, it's very tough. You need a bigger population to actually be able to make a living flying people on a balloon. So kept that up for a couple of years, that little idea that it might happen, and it didn't. And in the meantime, then I picked up the trumpet again.
Right. And so you moved to, when did you move to the Farmington area? When did you move to Shiprock and the Farmington, that area? When was that? Do you remember?
Early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so after you moved to New Mexico and after you realized ballooning wasn't going to work for you, you started a very unique group that I'd never heard of, and I've done some research, and it's called Brassworks IV. So tell me what is, so, because like I said, I'd never heard of it. And I'm showing my ignorance here because
No.
what is Brassworks IV? And tell us more about it, because I've been listening to the music and I am extremely impressed. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, there was a local, the college here, the San Juan College, has, of course, a music department of sorts, but they have a community band and orchestra and things like that. And the conductor at that time asked me if I would come and play a solo with the band, which I did. And in that group were these three phenomenal brass players, just phenomenal. One was another trumpet player, Scott Ramsey, who's very big known all over New Mexico because he grew up here. He anywhere you go in New Mexico in the music department, they've heard of Scott. Connie Schultz, exceptional euphonium player. And the trombone player was Paul Barra, who had he grew up back in Jersey City and had done some fine work. He happened to be working on airplanes at that time. He was an airplane mechanic too. And when I heard these guys, I said, let's do something. I've never been a fan of brass quintets, and I'm not sure why. I just never got off on that style of music. And if you go through like the old King catalog or some publisher now, there's very little quartet music too. Certainly any kind of music that people want to hear. Right. There's all kinds of educational stuff there, but we got together. I said, guys, let's give it a shot, and it just took off like crazy. I mean, we just happened to be four equal-minded people in this little town. Nobody knows Farmington, and when we traveled around, we traveled a lot through New Mexico playing, and nobody could say nothing good comes out of Farmington. Are you kidding me? There's got some oil and gas up there. You can't have any music, So, but this group we really gelled, and it was a great experience. And both Scott and Paul were really good arrangers and composers, and so they did almost all of our music. And
it's gorgeous. I'll put a link down below so that people can click on it, the YouTube page that has some wonderful arrangements on it.
Yeah, we did cornets. We didn't play trumpets. We played two cornets, euphonium, and trombone. So we got that kind of real homogeneous sound, that all those four instruments make. I think that's my problem with typical quintets is that those instruments, they kind of fight with each other for some reason, sound-wise.
Okay.
But when you change that out to cornet, whoa, the whole thing just opens up. It's just,
Yeah, it's a very, as you said, it's a very homogeneous sound. The cornets complement each other, the euphonium and the trombone complement each other, and the four of you work together. It's got some beautiful, and again, the recordings I listened to were the ones on YouTube, and the I don't know where you recorded those, but they're gorgeous. The acoustics are amazing.
yeah. There happens to be a very good studio up in Durango. That's where we did our, where we recorded our CDs. CDs, remember CDs?
Yes, I do actually. So how many CDs did you guys release?
We have three.
Three. Okay.
And we have
And
outtakes from several that never got made, but
I'll have to so when we're done with all of this, I'll figure out where you can purchase, people can purchase these, and we'll see where we can get the links on down below, and I'll try to get that up there, because if people haven't listened to this, I really think they need to, because it opened my eyes to a completely different sound. This is different, and it sounds different, and it's unique. And I think that's wonderful. And my compliments to all of you.
well, thank you. It's Scott died about 6 or 7 years ago, and honestly, what we had decided was that when one of us couldn't do it, the group would be no more. We haven't tried to revive it or anything like that. It is what, it was just a highlight in all of our lives musically.
Oh, I bet it was.
And we worked really hard. We rehearsed 3 times a week, 3 hours, 3 times a week, before we felt confident enough to go out and almost all of our, when we did live concerts, they were always by memory.
Oh, really?
Which I didn't think I could do. I hadn't.
You sound like me.
I'm lucky to be able to play taps,
It takes me forever to memorize something. And when I do, I'm okay with it, but it takes me forever. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's, so we had a 90-minute program that we had from memory. And once we started doing that, everything changed among us as well. And that ability to, I really am kind of against when I watch brass quintets, they're all sitting there facing each other, there's no contact with the audience. There's zero contact. Unless they get up like Canadian Brass started, that whole new thing to go out and interact with people. So that's what we did. So we could do the whole thing standing and facing the people and smiling and communicating with them, not just with music. But the first time we stepped out with a memorized piece, it was one of those canzonas, Gabriele.
Okay.
And I thought I was never going to make it through.
But you did.
But we did, and that started a whole new evolution of our group. So
that's amazing.
Well, it's actually easier to find 4 good players than it is to find 5. If there's young people out there in college or something and trying to put together a group, a trio would be even better, but the music is very limited for trio.
Especially for that genre. Yeah. So let's talk about your book that you put out, because here's the book. It's Perfecting Your Practice with Peak Performance. And this was first published in 2007. And I'm impressed. It's quite the book. And I like the fact that you say, right off the bat, this is not a method book. This is not a start on page 1 and go to page 100. Right. This is a book you need to read, sit down, digest, and you jump around in. Can talk to me about this book, please?
Well, I remember, and this actually started in Norway. I decided, well, if I'm going to be a professional trumpet player, I should know all the stuff that's ever been published. Well, of course, that's impossible.
Right.
It's a little easier now because everything can be downloaded. But I started at the beginning of the Robert King catalog. You remember the King catalog?
Yes.
Nobody knows about the King catalog anymore, but that was the Bible for brass players as far as finding music. And I just started at the top of alphabetically at the top of the list, trumpet. And I bought everything that was available at that time.
Wow.
And decided I need to know what people are doing out there. If I'm going to be teaching, I should know some of this stuff, you know. And what I found, of course, is it's also almost always just notes. There are very little, I should say, explanations of why things are written in method books and how somebody should actually approach it. It goes page 1, 2, 3, 4, just like you said. I remember, I think one of my first, the Bellwind Band Builder or something like that from years ago. And that's how it was. You do one page and your teacher crosses it off and you do another one. So I decided all the important things have already been written about. There's no new enough in learning to play the trumpet. You got to practice, you know.
Right.
And so when I wrote this book, I wanted there to be lengthy descriptions and reasons for doing something a certain way. And as you mentioned, there's probably more pages of writing than there are of exercises. But that was something that I lacked when I would read other method books. I didn't, because the teacher never, or the writer never really explained what it was all about. Think of the Clark book, the Clark technical book, you know, just bang it away. We all use it, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth from the things that I had learned over the years.
Okay.
I've been a student of many teachers over the years, and I was trying to, you know, synthesize in a way all the stuff that I had learned into impossible, but I like that approach rather than just writing a whole bunch of exercises. I think the book is designed more for people who really truly want to learn how to play the trumpet. I don't think college kids, they don't want to read. They want to play.
Okay.
Just like the geese aren't going to the music. No, just put the music down there and let me play it. So it takes a special kind of student, and a student doesn't matter what age they are. I'm talking about the student of the instrument, you know. And I think there's enough guys who want to learn that way. Although the book has not been a huge financial success.
You know what? It doesn't have to be, and I realize it would be nice because you spent all that time writing it. But for those of us who are trying to learn and understand, especially us older adults, and I say that nicely for myself, you know, we're trying to understand and we have the time to put into it. And that's the thing that I like about it is that I'm only just starting into it. I am only just now understanding some of these things. And it's nice to be able to get an explanation of why versus just do it.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
So, and then you also have another book out, and I love the picture, although it's oh, I can't get it. Oh, bummer. Well, maybe that way. There we go. I love the picture, by the way. So this is No Excuses, 5, 6, 7 minute focused warm-ups.
Yeah.
And you sent this to me, and I know it's available. I know it's out there, and you said it's not out there for purchase. So I'm sure we can find a way to figure out how people can find this. They just have to look it up, I guess, or contact you directly.
You know, they can do that, and you know, then there's no middleman. That's one thing about publishing music. You probably know this, but you get 10% or something on it.
Yeah, the publishing companies take all the money. But I'm laughing because this No Excuses 5, 6, and 7 minute warm-ups, I incorporated this into my routine not more than just a week ago. And I think it's awesome. In your peak performance book, it says something that I thought was absolutely wonderful. Quote unquote, warming up, trumpet etiquette. Warming up is in public is like flossing your teeth in public. It's not nice. If you're too late to a gig or a rehearsal to find an out of the way place to warm up, tough luck. Get there early or use a mute. No one wants to hear you warm up. Nobody wants to hear you warm up, so go either find someplace else to warm up, use a mute, or do what I do. Warm up at home.
Exactly.
Take the time. And I get it. Okay. People work full time. Not everybody's retired. I'm retired. I assume you're retired. But not everybody has the time, but don't do it in front of everybody.
Right. I mean, if you can get to a rehearsal on time, you can get to a rehearsal 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And these warm-ups are wonderful. I think they're great. They're very focused. Their idea is to first you start out with some mouthpiece buzzing, and then you start off with some lip slurs or some long tones. From long tones, you go into chromatics, then you go into some lip bends, some lip slurs, and then you do some scales. 5 minutes, that's all it takes. And then the second one takes about 7 minutes. And if you do all of them, it takes about 15, 20 minutes. It's perfect. That's what I was doing before I got on the air with you. Let's wrap this up. I want to thank you, Mick Hesse. I want to say that correctly. Mick Hesse, for joining me today. I want to thank you for everything that you've done. I'll make sure that people know about who you are, because your history and your legacy of trumpet playing needs to be brought out in the open. And Brassworks IV, all the things that you've done, thank you very, very, very much. I appreciate it. And I look forward to actually meeting you in person very, very soon.